And as we head into summer, our patients are going to be facing one of the biggest challenges to their recovery, one that we don't talk about enough. But we have one of our best here today from BrightView to help us prepare our patients for this challenging season. We are joined today by Rhonda Roper. She's BrightView's VP of Quality Operations for Kentucky. She actually joined BrightView in 2020. She has more than 20 years of experience in behavioral health care and is a licensed clinical social worker, but she has experience in treatment, clinical supervision, training, and leadership in outpatient, inpatient, and medication-assisted treatment. Ron is very passionate in supporting quality care for individuals managing addiction and behavioral health needs. And with that, I will let Rhonda begin.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for that nice introduction. And first and foremost, welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining today to discuss just an important topic. We were really excited to be offering this since we are heading into the summer months. And so this should be very helpful to you in working with individuals that you're serving. So just an overview of some of the topics that we're going to review today. Again, we're going to look at summer recovery strategies. And we know that addiction doesn't take a vacation, even during the summer. Even though many of us will be taking vacations, it continues to be a need for individuals. We also want to talk about summer preparation and just compare that to what it's like preparing for the holidays or the winter. Look at some of the challenges individuals can face in the summer, and then also just exploring what use may look like for individuals if they do relapse or return to use during this time period. We also are going to talk about some ways we can help prevent those issues coming up in the summer. And so we'll look at ways of educating patients, reviewing coping skills, and then just discussing some other options that will be helpful strategies in just navigating the summer months. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I said it earlier here, addiction doesn't take a vacation. And so we know that we do often spend a lot of time when we're working with patients in recovery in helping them prepare for the holidays. What we have found through our experience and treatment here at BrightView is that we need to take that same approach for individuals during the summer months as well. And so just as we help prepare patients for the holidays, Thanksgiving and New Year's, they do face many of the same challenges during the summer months. So, in a sense, it doesn't make much sense that that's not more of a focus in recovery planning and treatment and then supporting individuals. So again, a lot of what we're going to look at today is going to offer some helpful strategies. We know that the warmer weather may signal, just kind of laying back, being more relaxed, taking a break. We see that occurring in, our daily lives. And then also we see that occurring around just the idea of addiction and recovery as well. And so ultimately that means we need to take a different approach. And as I mentioned, we want to make sure we're educating on the importance of the summer preparation and really helping, individuals that we're supporting be able to see that they need to practice a lot of the same strategies that they've been using all year and the importance of continuing those in the summer, even some of the ways that they prepared for the holiday season. Slide. So some data for you here, just to shed a bit of light on this. Here at BrightView, we see a 9% decrease in patient volume. So that looks like decreased visits and admissions for patients. And we gathered this data looking at a 12-month period, June through August. And so a 9% decrease is certainly, worth recognizing. And, obvious there we see patients, coming in for fewer visits or a dip in new admissions for individuals starting the treatment process. We also looked at just some focus group information and, our patients confirmed that the summer months were triggering for many of them and also prevented them from, engaging in treatment or starting treatment even. Additionally, in the summer and winter months, we see, a real difference in just the, day-to-day life for individuals. So, during the winter, it's quite common for us to, really isolate more. It's cold outside, so folks are staying in their homes more. They're not going out and socializing as much. And so where the triggering, really comes in during the summer is related to that increased socialization that often occurs during the summer. So there's more gatherings, more get-togethers. There may be more time spent with family, more recreational activities. And so, that certainly can be a trigger that we'll dig into a bit more in just a bit. Next slide. So again, that concept of socialization versus isolation. During the winter and during the holidays, again, temperatures are colder, more time indoors, shorter days, less sunlight. And then there's three major holidays, in the holiday season there, ranging over 8 weeks. And so that certainly can be triggering for individuals, especially those in recovery dealing with their addiction. But just the same, when we look at the summer, there's just as many risks there. So big standout here, summer is 12 weeks long. So it's even longer than that holiday season. We do still have some holidays included during the summer, which signals times for celebrations, gathering, those sorts of things. There's also typically more time outdoors. I mentioned socializing, more activities and events. And then the weather is warmer. We're going to look at that and how that can relate for folks as well in just a minute. But whereas we dealt with those shorter days during the holidays in the summer, the days are longer. And then there's more sunlight. And so some of those things can certainly lead to triggers that we're going to look at. But really nice comparison there of the holidays versus summer. And, honestly, when we were putting this together, I didn't realize there were as many things similar over the summer as to the holidays, but at the same time, there's a lot of differences there. If you look at just the data here, you might even see that the summer could potentially be more triggering based on some of the things that are listed there on the slide. Next slide. So some information from our patients. Again, they confirm that summer does offer a lot of distractions. And so some of the feedback we heard from them, some of their quotes here, you have more time to hustle and more time to make some money. And so while that can be a good thing, that certainly can also be a distraction or a trigger from, normal events in someone's life or a trigger for potential, return to use. Just the same, there's more opportunities for leisure or relaxing. There's vacation, staycations, we heard, sports, concerts, festivals, all these things occurring outside during the summer. And one of the things that we know in our culture is that alcohol use or even drug use is often associated with many of those leisure activities. And so our patients really confirmed, those as being some distractions and potential triggers for them. So wanting to share this with you just as examples that you're aware of and knowing, where individuals in recovery are coming from and verbalizing some of these distractions. We heard a quote from a patient here also. He said, took my dog for a walk with my boyfriend and forgot. So while we also see distractions, being potentially negative and impacting recovery, it could even mean that, it's helpful as well. And so a person might be thinking about or triggered to use, but they have the opportunity, to engage in something outside, like in this case, walking their dog. And then that distracted them from, that potential trigger. Another patient said, you'll also talk to anyone in the summer, so you have more access to drugs. And so just some patient stories that I've heard, certainly around this concept is just running into people during events or activities. I even have heard patients telling me of running into people at local parks, people from their past or festivals that may be going on, in their town, any of those things. And so certainly running into those individuals can be triggering. And then, those opportunities to socialize can also lead to potential issues. The weather was also reported there. No one was at group because it was nice out. And so I'll certainly say from many years of doing group counseling, we do see that a lot during the warmer weather months. People aren't coming indoors for things like groups or keeping appointments at times just because of that desire to be outside because of the pretty weather. And then another big one here, childcare. So one of the things that we know associated with summer is that school is out. And so while that can be, a good thing in many ways, that can also be another trigger, managing the childcare, managing those parenting responsibilities, not getting those breaks from the kids, during the school day. And so we heard, 50% of patients that had kids, they did mention childcare as being a trigger and just that change in the child's schedule with school being out. We didn't hear much about, needing childcare. That wasn't cited as an issue, but more of just that return to responsibility from the summer is more of what we're hearing here. Next slide. And then different challenges that can be triggers that are occurring during the summer. So, each of you in this call today, just think about different memories that you might have from the summer. And so just the same, individuals in recovery experience the same thing there. They may be thinking back to events that occurred, during the summer where they may have been using substances or engaging in alcohol use with family or friends. And so that emotional association can definitely be a trigger, and that time of year can be a trigger, especially if those memories are associated and occurred during that time of year. And so our patients, report that they often experience this emotional association just from the standpoint that we're hearing from them, there's a lot of leisure activities occurring that involve drinking or use, during the summer months. We also hear a lot about social pressure. So this is another important one to be on your radar. Increased pressure from people, running into people, like I mentioned, at certain events, and then, people that you may experience them and they may not be in recovery. And so that social pressure can be a major trigger for individuals, and we'll talk about some strategies to help deal with that, but it can be difficult to say no or decline, engaging or partaking. So we certainly want to make sure we're preparing individuals, with the skills and ability and helping them just recognize, the need to do that. There's also, increased exposure and availability. So we saw on that previous slide that the days are longer during the summer months. And so simply put, we know that that can lead to more opportunities, for use. With more hours in the day, there's more opportunities, more events, and then it may be easier to get access to drugs during the summer months, just from the standpoint that there's not as many barriers to getting out, and getting to places, because the weather certainly, is more cooperative in the summer than in the winter months. We talked about leisure on one of the previous slides, and we know that summer is really associated with this concept of leisure, relaxation, being outside by the pool, barbecuing, all of those visions come into mind. And so one of the things we know associated with that whole concept of leisure is that there can be a lack of structure and routine. And so that boredom can definitely be a trigger. So we want to make sure to prepare folks, for ways that they can deal with that and some strategies to help. So that's another reason summer can be challenging there. I'll reference back to that, childcare mention that we had on the previous slide, just from the standpoint that, when a person has kids and they're out of school for the summer, that may also create, less structure and, lead to additional triggers there as well. When the kids aren't going to school, for several hours a day, the parents are often left with trying to come up with things for the kids to do, keeping them busy, happy, and entertained, as we all know, for anyone, with kids. So that definitely can also be an additional trigger there that we, of course, want to help prepare them for. And then this one is really interesting. So the heat. The heat can be a trigger, for on your end. Think of a time if you have been, out in the heat and gotten really hot. And we often associate that with getting irritable, right? You just want to get in somewhere and cool down. You just want it to go away. You want to cool off. You want to drink something, cold. All those physical things occur when we get heated, especially during the summer months when the temperatures continue, to be hotter and more uncomfortable, we would say. So heat exposure is definitely a relapse trigger, and most importantly from the standpoint that it can take a psychological toll on a person. Being uncomfortable, being hot certainly can create lots of emotions and feelings. And so that can, in a sense be uncomfortable. So really important to recognize there. And then just the opposite, can a person have seasonal affective disorder in the summer? I think we're going to dig into that in just a minute. So we'll wait for the next slide here for that one. But the answer is yes. The summertime blues can occur just the same as the wintertime blues. And so just the opposite, in the winter, there's something called seasonal affective disorder that can take a toll on a person from the standpoint that the days are shorter, there's less daylight. That can often be associated with feelings of depression, low energy, fatigue. That lack of sunlight really can play a role there. And then in the summer, even though it is, longer days, more sunlight, individuals can still experience what we'd call a reverse seasonal affective disorder or a summer depression. I don't believe this one's widely known. There's not a lot of discussion about this, not as much as with the seasonal affective disorder in the winter. So really important to educate our patients about and individuals that you're supporting just to make them aware of this. You'll see the symptoms there on the slide, but thinking about the heat that we were just talking through, irritability, anxiety, feelings of insomnia, appetite might change, really decreasing in the summer. Heat can definitely take a toll there, and they may even experience weight loss. Again, heat causing discomfort, and then the impact really being with this summer depression or reverse SAD, difficulty concentrating, feeling less motivated, feeling like you're, hopeless, you're frustrated, you're just not sure what to do with yourself. And so that uncertainty and difficulty, concentrating and focusing is, as we know, very uncomfortable if you ever experience any of those symptoms at any time. So this is certainly something that we want to make sure we're getting the information out on and making folks aware that this is a possibility for individuals as well, just the same as during those winter months. Next slide. So I've jumped ahead a bit with heat, but heat definitely can be a trigger. So we know that it can help with, an individual feeling more uncomfortable. We talked through just the ways that they may experience, various emotions or feelings related to being overheated. I would say every person joining today at some point, you've gotten overheated when you've been outside. So just think back to that as we're talking through this. But one of the things I'll mention, not on the slide, is, one area of relief during the winter months or summer months really is related to getting out of the heat and getting in somewhere cool. And so, on that note, I'll mention that we often experience, patients not having the resources for that. So it may be that their home isn't adequately cooled, or it could be that their air conditioning is broken. Many things there can play a role for sure, but when we think about the heat, that's certainly something that we want to factor in. Besides just looking at that emotional impact from the heat, there's also a physical impact. And so one of the things that we know about the summer months when it's hot is that we do need to focus more on hydration. And for individuals dealing with addiction, they often need education around just healthy habits related to that. They may not understand or know the concept or information related to the importance of staying hydrated, drinking water, drinking, healthy beverages like that. And so we see more of that physical impact, certainly where that knowledge is missing. And so, as we see here, the heat can definitely lead to the dehydration. And then it can also contribute to other health issues, being impacted or worsened as well. Mental health can also be impacted from the standpoint of, a person, as we've talked about, experiencing more emotions. And then we see from the data that heat increases the admission of behavioral health patients for behavioral health issues as well. And then those socioeconomic disparities I mentioned, lack of access to, a home that is cooled, or, a big one there that we haven't talked about yet is just a lot of people work outdoors. And so when you're working outdoors in the summer, the heat can take an even bigger toll from the standpoint, that that person is out there all day and they may not have the opportunities to cool down the way they need to, more risk of dehydration, and then obviously those emotional and mental health impacts as well from being out there. So again, really important to be aware of and just make sure we're covering and educating, the folks that we're treating so they're aware of these potential triggers and most importantly, learning some ways to navigate through those. Next slide. So what is a return to use? And so we've talked a lot about so far triggers that occur during the summer months. And what we know about triggers is that they can often lead a person to, using or sometimes referred to as relapsing. And so what happens when a person returns to use is that they resume addictive behaviors in some way after a period of abstinence or a period of not using. And so, that process is, it's detailed. It's not just about one thing occurring. It may be that the person, sees this play out in the process first before they ever take a drink or use. It, can show up in terms of them returning to, socialize with people that they were using with. It may look like them, changing their routine. They stop or decrease the frequency of doing, what works for them. And so what we know here is that it plays out in many ways, as you'll see there with that, graphic that we have around relapse prevention. So we want to make sure that we're educating patients about what this can look like and making sure that they understand that relapse is a process, returning to use is a process, and if we're able to recognize that pattern for them, if they're able to see how those things play out, then they're more likely to be able to intervene before use occurs or before the relapse becomes too severe. So that definitely, is a goal that we want to be practicing there with helping them recognize the emotional and the mental and the physical stages of relapse because all three of those are involved. We also want to make sure that we're educating on relapse prevention. And so most importantly, assessing high-risk situations. And so looking at situations they're experiencing or they may be experiencing and talking through how those can play out. We like to use a term called playing the tape through, and that's pretty helpful when talking with folks in recovery. It may be that they're planning on engaging in something or going back and hanging out with someone from their past or, whatever the case may be. And asking them to play the tape through can really help them with seeing, what that's going to look like should they go down that road again. Looking at it from both angles. It may go either way. It could go to the worst case scenario and lead to a return to use, or it may be, in talking through playing that script, they recognize that, it's not even worth trying because of the risk. So assessing those high risk situations is really crucial. And making sure we're talking with our patients about any of those. We also want to be looking for just changes in their attitudes. And so I'll say this from, my experience, that can be one of the first giveaways that a person is on a pattern or path of returning to use. You may see that something that was previously very important to them has now become not so important. It may be that something they were really motivated at doing or changing or working on, all of a sudden becomes something that they don't care about anymore. We may also see that, they are, completely changing the coping skills that they're using, or maybe they're just saying, hey, none of those helped me anyway, and I'm not doing any of those things anymore. So those can definitely be some warning signs there. So just as we see here on the slide, we always want to be working on helping, educate on new coping skills, figuring out what's working, what's not working, and, really observing those attitude changes there for sure. Next slide. So again, some other red flags here. One of the things we often see at BrightView is just missing appointments. When we see that individuals normally are, keeping their appointments and then they've missed a couple of appointments or even one appointment, that can be a signal. Skipping medications can also be another signal that something's going on. The patient might potentially be, on a pattern of a return to use. Or it may be that we're hearing from them that, treatment's not really helping me anyway. This only helps me so much. It's not helping me, the way I want it to. That was something I would often and still hear from patients, frequently. So, really talking through those things and helping, identify why they're feeling that way, what's happened, is really important as you see those red flags occurring. A few other big ones here, changes in appearance, really telling for, for folks that we're working with. It may be that, they're normally when they're seeing us or they're coming in, they're normally, well dressed or, their hygiene looks really good. And then all of a sudden we see a change, simply put, they may be letting themselves go or less of a focus or, look messy or unkempt in some way. And so that appearance is, something that we should always be checking in on. And if we see those things happening, we should just be checking in and saying like, hey, you look a little bit different today. You feeling okay? Has anything happened? Anything changed? Take that step, to offer that support by just asking those, simple questions. We may also, of course, be seeing some changes in behavior, and that may look different for each person. Think about people that you're supporting, and it may be you see just changes in their attitude, changes in them not being as friendly or as socializing with you as much. It may be that they appear very guarded, or they're, resistant to talking with you about something. From the standpoint that they're trying to hide something or keep something private. On the opposite, it is, of course, different for every individual. And so we may, on the flip, see an overconfidence. A patient that normally has, been pretty realistic in looking at the pros and cons of things or talking things through may come in all of a sudden and we might start seeing that, oh, they're doing great. I always like to use like a rating scale for asking patients how they're doing and how they're feeling, on a scale of a 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. And, patients that hang out in that 5 or 6 all of a sudden coming in and I'm a 10, I'm great, I don't need anything from you, I'm doing great. That is usually a red flag that there's something, happening, certainly that's worth talking about, but most importantly, it could be a signal of a return to use for sure. And then changes, change is tough for everyone. And so if you become aware that an individual you're supporting has experienced a big change or there's been something in their life out of the ordinary that's occurred, it may be something like a anniversary, of something that they'd experienced in the past. It could be that they've had a loss, someone that they had, been very close to, either a friend or family member. That relationship has ended, or, in the worst case scenario, it may be they've lost that individual. Perhaps there's been a death, and grief is occurring. So those are certainly some changes that you can see. And then some other ones, loss in job, change in job, change in work hours, change in responsibilities at work, a change in their boss or their supervisor. Any of those changes could be signals for increased stress, lower confidence, difficulty coping. And so certainly it could lead to some potential difficulty with, return to use for sure. Last thing on this one, I would say understanding life changes for individuals that you're dealing with. All those examples I gave you are certainly pertinent and could apply to any person, but really getting to know, your person that you're supporting, their history will help you know more about those life changes. I would say this, it may just be the time of year and the season changing and their daily routine changing can be enough of a change for someone to signal a potential return to use. So we certainly need to help them navigate through that and get a plan. so they're able to get the help and, support that they need, just getting a system and a plan in place for the summer, just like they had for the spring, fall, winter, all the other seasons. Next slide. And then 3 big steps that we can use to help. I think these are so great, and we've talked about a lot of these already, but we want to get the awareness out there that summer can be, a trigger for folks just like any other season. So we want to be alerting patients or the individuals that we're serving. And so they're comfortable knowing and talking about anything they're experiencing and recognizing, how that might occur for them individually. We also want to be reviewing coping skills. That is always crucial and helpful anytime we're supporting anyone working through any type of addiction. And so helping them, identify what's working and learn new strategies. It's always good for a person to have, sort of those fallback strategies for coping that they know are always helpful. But, one of the things that keeps like the pizzazz there and keeps the interest for everyone is always being able to identify some new things a person can try. And so I would encourage you during summer, especially, there's opportunities for different strategies for coping that are more available in the summer compared to the winter months. And so we'll look at a few of those in just a minute. Next slide. So again, we want to make sure we're educating patients about just the risk for relapse. We do a lot of that in the winter again, but we often miss that in the summer. So make that, an intentional focus with patients or individuals that you're supporting, just to bring that awareness there. Also, just letting them know about potential medication interactions. Certain medications certainly can have interactions in the heat. There may be labels on, the prescription warning about being out in the sun or being out, in of temperatures at a certain degree, more risk for sunburn, exhaustion, overheating. So make sure you're checking in on that with individuals so you can rule that out. I think those are often things we forget about. And so that's an important one. I'll share when we have used this with our patients. We often get feedback that, oh gosh, I have a couple of medications, I'm taking, and I never would have thought to remember to look at the bottle about that and knowing that. So really important to emphasize and get that awareness out there. And then we talked a bit about just the importance of staying hydrated. And, I would say that's always a helpful thing to remind and educate any person on. And especially during the summer months, we want to make sure we're letting people know about the risk for, stroke and exhaustion. We often see, on the news, the weather section there, when the temperatures get, at the top level there's a warning about being outside for extended periods of time. And so letting folks that you're supporting know about that, reminding them on that. And then especially focusing in on any individuals who are working outside in this heat. So they're aware of that too, and knowing how to, get breaks built in during the day and get hydrated. And then again, I think the theme so far in this, presentation, nearly 40 minutes in, is just about, getting the information out there, planning ahead. But one key point here I'll mention is, working with the individuals that you're supporting through their treatment plan. It makes sense to update and work with the patient on, updating their goals and setting, reminders about these things. And so using the treatment plan for that is a perfect way to make sure that the importance of, this is really emphasized with patients. And then treatment plans are based off of setting up measurable goals and objectives with patients and individuals that we're supporting. So this is a great opportunity to add some specifics about coping skills, self-care, all of these things we've been talking about so far in the presentation. Next slide. So reviewing coping skills, I jumped ahead to play the tape already. Sorry, I tend to do that sometimes. It did relate back to the other slide though, but playing the tape through is a great strategy to use, with any individuals you're supporting, or even if you've got families or, family members or friends, dealing with addiction or in recovery. Identifying triggers that they might experience and then thinking through what might happen, worst case scenario. These are really important questions you can use to help the person be prepared and really play that tape through. First and foremost, knowing the environment or atmosphere that they're going into, should they choose to engage in this activity or visit with this person, attend this event, whatever the case may be. Knowing who can be there, that will be a trigger, and then what might be a trigger, and talking through that who and what with them. And I want to encourage you, if you're doing this with, individuals that you're supporting, making a list, having them make a list so they have that to reference back on. And it may be that you revisit this playing the tape and the same experience again next week, and they're able to identify some additional, triggers there. So this can definitely be something that you build on week to week, multiple discussions and times to talk through this for sure. Knowing what they're walking into. So that's that planning ahead there. So thinking about what the situation might look like, and even looking at it from like the best case, worst case scenario. Really important to look at both options there. When we are thinking back to, situations that have occurred in the past, sometimes individuals, can really have like a euphoric recall where they're only remembering the good things about what it was like to go to that barbecue or go over and visit with that family member. So looking at both options there is really important. And then what boundaries can they put in place to help deal with the situation? Boundaries are more than just saying no. Boundaries involve physical boundaries. And so it may be that they're going to attend an event and then they know they're only going to be interacting with a couple of people, and they're specifically identifying people that they're not going to interact with. It can also mean that they're setting boundaries with their time. So going to a barbecue and, knowing going in, setting the plan that, I'm only going to stay for 15 minutes. And so helping that individual come up with that plan and how to communicate that. It may be that they walk into the barbecue and say, hey, I just wanted to stop in for a few minutes. I've actually got another appointment after this, so I'm only going to be here for about a half an hour, 15 minutes, whatever the case is, that they're comfortable with. So those are some ways they can, use those boundaries, and that can be really helpful. And then how can they plan for success? And so again, this really involves, helping them think about what they might encounter in that situation, that best case, worst case scenario here. For example, when a patient sees their friends drinking or they run into someone reminding them of a past negative experience, what emotions are they going to experience and what can they do about those to handle them effectively? So talking through those things, is really crucial in helping them be prepared as best they can. And then it also helps support them in using any coping skills to deal with those situations since they have prepared ahead. Next slide. So one that's really important here is just letting go of false expectations. I always like to really focus on that a lot with individuals, I'm supporting, from the standpoint that many times I think a person can think if they've made changes in their life, they feel like they're more in control than they are, from the standpoint that they may think, oh, since I've been able to, improve, my recovery in this way, things are going to go better with my family when I go over to the 4th of July barbecue. My mom, who normally wants to bring up all of my past misdeeds, she might not do that this time because she's going to be so proud of me for where I am. While I hope that's the case, the best thing that we can do is definitely help our patients prepare ahead of time. And again, that same concept, prepare for the worst, right? Think about what might happen. Chances are, if mom normally brings that up, chances are she's, very likely to do the same at this barbecue as well. So helping that individual be prepared for that to happen, and really recognizing that not everything's going to go as planned. It's safe to say that that is a healthy philosophy for any of us to have on anything. There often can be, events or experiences that occur that go differently than what we thought. what is it they say? Sometimes having a plan means that you end up without a plan because so many things show up that were unexpected. So preparing, for both is always the best way there. Obviously, identifying triggers, we've talked through that. And then really taking a focus on the awareness that not all relationships are worth holding on to. Just because a person was in a relationship with someone, whether it's a friend, even family member, acquaintance in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean that that is, the best thing for them in the present. So helping talk through those things with folks you're supporting and identifying, some of those is really a helpful way to help them in planning ahead. And then arriving well fed. And so there's a concept called in helping deal with relapse prevention called the HALT acronym. So when a person can go into a situation and not be hungry, they are more likely to be more rational, be more, focus on making the decisions that are most helpful for them. And then also following their plan, if they're not hungry. What we know is when we get hungry, it tends to take over our thinking, especially when it gets to that point where, it is, at the peak. And so, going into a situation prepared, well hydrated, having already eaten something, is going to keep a person from making like a rash decision. Oh, I'll just do this once, since I'm so hungry. So definitely going in, in a healthy, situation with being already fed. And then self-talk. Self-talk, of course, so important as a coping skill. And, you can say that the way we talk to ourselves really has an impact on what we do and what we think. And then most importantly, our confidence and our ability to follow through, with those plans that we made. When we were talking about coping skills and working on this plan to go to this event. So, self-talk, having the right to make your decisions, having the right to say no, having the right to not meet unreasonable expectations. So it's okay to go to the family barbecue and only spend half an hour. It's okay to make your needs as the most important rather than focusing on pleasing others. Being accepting of your mistakes and your failures and focusing on the fact that you're working on yourself, you're working on improvement. And so what's happening in the here and now is important, and you have the right to, move on and, continue working on what you need to make yourself happy and your life happy. We also want to make sure that people are empowered to say no without feeling guilty. And as I say that out loud, I'm fully aware that that can be really tough. We know that especially family can be extra tough to say no to. So just going back again to that preparing ahead. So, I always encourage individuals to, go into any of those situations with family or friends and, go ahead and have a plan for how long you're going to stay, who you're going to talk to, what you're going to drink, what you're going to eat. Bring a drink into this event. A lot of people bring those, the Stanleys, the water bottles, all that stuff now. Walk into those events prepared so you're in control. And then most importantly, setting a time for departure. Even if a person walks into an event and they didn't set a pre-planned amount of time to stay, it's always good once you get there, you check out the scenery and the situation, always good to, go ahead and have in your mind your planned departure time. Just that structure is helpful in being able to follow through with any plan and set those boundaries, the most appropriately. Next slide. And then again, just connecting to a social network that's so crucial during the summer months. And any individuals that they have had in their, support network through the summer months, should continue if those people are helpful to that individual and, supporting them in their recovery. We also should be working on creating an updated relapse prevention plan when, heading into the summer months. for the purposes of just being able to talk through everything that we've looked at, in this webinar so far today, but it gives the opportunity there to help, support individuals and just planning ahead for anything that might occur. And again, putting that awareness out there that, there's going to be stressors and things in the summer, just like there are during any month of the year or any season. And then celebrating milestones, acknowledging how far a person has come, the progress that they've made, and looking forward to the future. That is so important from the standpoint that it does encourage and motivate and helps individuals to be able to have that assurance that they're have the confidence that they can continue with their recovery plan, and that it's worthwhile to do so. And then self-care practices. This one is so important. So, we talked about hydration on a few different slides, but, one of the most helpful things any of us can do, anybody we're supporting can do, is really focus on eating, nutrient-dense foods. Taking time to make sure you're eating the right foods, you're eating enough. We talked about going into events, prepared, not hungry. And so we are what we eat, right? Every research that we read really just continues to validate that. So it's so important to hit this and make sure that, folks in recovery are understanding the importance of diet, and how they're feeling. To the extent I'll say this, changing your diet to a healthy diet is tough, just like any change is. And so if we can encourage them to take small steps and, engaging in some healthy eating, adding more fruits and vegetables, adding water, those things, can make a big difference and help get the momentum, to continue that even further. And then another thing I'll highlight here is just, exercise, walking. These are two options that are really available to us in the summer. Walking especially, our state parks are nice places for, relaxation. They're free, they're enjoyable, they're pretty, gives you the opportunity to get outside, get exposure to sunlight, nature, the birds, flowers, trees, all those things, which are so therapeutic. And so, encouraging individuals to take advantage of those things. There's lots of parks in the areas, and so being able to spend time in those, and even if it just looks like going out, sitting on a bench for 15 minutes, that is a step in the right direction. Even taking it further, with walking and exercise, those can be such helpful coping skills to help a person feel better and also just help them get more energy, and really helpful in dealing with, mood issues, decreasing depressive symptoms as well. And then last but not least there on this slide, just enjoyable activities. And so we often center our, planning around what all we have to do, right? Working and things with kids, paying bills, supplies, groceries, housekeeping, all those things. And so let's encourage and draw awareness to the fact of adding these self-care practices in just the same as we're doing with all those other responsibilities. So making sure that we're helping our, individuals that we're supporting who are in recovery recognize opportunities for enjoyable activities. It might be that we start with them by helping them, get a plan to get out to the park once a week for 30 minutes or an hour. Once you can set those small goals, those can take momentum for sure. Definitely. Next slide. And then discussing other options. And so, individuals may need to revisit their treatment options during the summer. So, looking at virtual treatment options can be really helpful. If, a person especially is experiencing, difficulty getting into in-person appointments, those virtual appointments can be so helpful. We also want to make sure they're aware of those virtual appointments, that those are an option, so that they know that that's another option besides just skipping their appointment or not coming in. Really pairing patients up with case management. We really focus on that, as a part of our program here, but especially during the summer months, as we talk through the child care, school being out, patients often need support with that. So being able to, help them get resources and supports there can be really helpful. Case management can really be a great resource in doing that. And then also helping them with transportation needs. And then group counseling, that can be a a great resource just for that ongoing support. What we find is that when patients engage in group, they start looking forward to coming back into the group for that socialization, that time they're spending with others who are dealing, with the same things that they're going through. So group counseling is so important to revisit, and then also just checking in to see if they need to schedule their, move their schedule around. It may be with school being out, an early morning appointment isn't as ideal as a later day appointment or a lunch appointment, whatever the case may be. And we may need to also look at increasing that during the summer, just to help with some of these different triggers and symptoms that we've been talking about. And again, as always, just making sure that they're able to get their medication that's prescribed, making sure it's not missed, making sure they're not laying off of taking it during the summer, and just checking in to make sure, all of those things are in place. So important there, just in discussing other options. Really, this looks like, revisiting that treatment plan that we looked at on a previous slide. So this is a great way to incorporate that as well. Next slide. And then we got some advice for you from people in recovery here at BrightView. And so, what we see here, when you develop new habits and hobbies, things change. Birds chirping doesn't come without a feeling of regret because you stayed up all night or reminds you of times you did. Warm weather no longer becomes connected to drinking. It can be connected to healthier things. And so that recall of memories can change. It may be that summer was always the time the person was really engaged in a lot of use. Well, when we help them incorporate these new coping skills and strategies, they can replace those negative, recall of events with these more positives for sure. And then lastly here, it helps to hang out with friends who are also staying sober or cool with not drinking or doing drugs. If I know I'm going to a place where people might be doing these things, I plan ahead and how to handle it. And so this could be bringing your own drinks or planning how to leave early if you feel uncomfortable. Keeping in touch with friends who support me also helps me with staying focused. And so again, these two quotes, I think, summed up everything that we've talked about so far. So certainly words of wisdom from some of our patients here at BrightView. Next slide. And this last one, my biggest tool is and always has been playing the tape through and thinking about all that I will lose, everything that will happen if I decide to use again. Do stuff in the day to tire yourself out, avoid triggering situations and people, tap into real feelings regularly, remember the emotional and financial despair from a heavy weekend. So thinking, through the worst case scenario, of what can happen if a person does, engage in some of those, addictive or return to use behaviors that we've talked about. Next slide. Yeah. So great way I was going to say, just a great way to end there with, some of our patients' words of wisdom. I love that those quotes really summarize everything that we talked about here. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Typically the patients can put it best for sure. Yeah. And starting out with the Q&As, before I start, we did drop a link to the PDF of today's slides, as well as a certificate of attendance, so that you'll find that in the chat. But for the Q&A portion, we actually do have a few that were submitted prior to today via registration. And one of those, Rhonda, is about common ways that we're seeing patients preserving their recovery. I mean, we talked about a number of different ways and options, but what do you typically see patients using as sort of their go-to in this manner?
Yeah, I think the big thing, I continue to hear from patients that's most helpful is just continuing to do what works. And so, knowing that summer it's a great time of year, but if something's been working for you and helping with your recovery, the rest of the year, what doesn't make sense to stop doing, in the summer. So just sticking to what works, sticking to a plan, continuing to focus on your recovery, even in the summer, I think is the most important, thing we hear from patients.
Great. And then another one that can come up actually year round, but definitely during the summer and the holidays, is you'll have patients talking or asking about non-alcoholic beers. I mean, especially now that uh, people will choose to be sober for a month or months at a time and drink non-alcoholic beverages. There seems to have even been an influx of them in the stores, but maybe you can speak a little bit to the difference between non-alcoholic beverages and things that patients need to remember.
Yeah, I think, the first, word of wisdom there with those, they call them NA beers or non-alcoholic, beers or alcoholic drinks, certainly is to just be careful with those. And so, even though they may be advertised as non-alcoholic, many of them still do have a small content of alcohol in them, just based on the way that they're made. And so, really being aware of that, I think, is really important from the standpoint that that exposure to that small amount of alcohol can still be very triggering for folks, especially if they've had difficulty with alcohol use disorder. So that would be, first word of wisdom there. Second, as well, is just, since those do taste like, traditional beers or alcoholic drinks, that taste and smell can be very triggering for individuals as well. And so, really knowing those things, going into making any plans to consume any of those is really important from the standpoint that most of the time those do act as a relapse trigger or a potential trigger for folks. On the flip, I've known some patients who've been able to, occasionally engage in those and, not have issues. And then I've also heard from patients that they've tried them and it's not worth it. So it's really individualized, I think, based on the person. But again, just in summary, making sure people know those do usually have a small amount of alcohol in them. And just checking to make sure and knowing that prior to consuming any of those is really important.
That's a really great point. We had a follow-up question to that saying, is it considered relapsing if a patient drinks NA beers? And I think to your point, and as many of these questions, it's not really a yes or no answer. It's more of it depends, right? Like as you pointed out, for some patients, it's not worth it. For others, it might be too risky. It could lead to other behavior they don't want to, get into. And for others, it may not be an issue. So that's a great point.
Yeah, definitely. I think we talked about the different stages of relapse or return to use, and then we talked about the different ways that plays out. So it may be drinking these impacts someone through like recall and memories of times when they were drinking, and that may lead to them engaging in some risky behaviors. Or it may be that it causes them to experience different emotions again. So it's complicated, as far as that goes. But to your point, it would be individualized based on the person, and so again, not a yes or no answer on that one.
Okay, well, this has been great. We're actually out of time, but really appreciate everybody joining us. Rhonda, thank you for taking us through this topic.